Good afternoon, everybody. I want to welcome you to our second day of Adam Smith Week. I appreciate you all coming out this afternoon. I'm excited about today's events. For those of you who may not know me, I'm Professor Peter Calcano. I'm the Director of Center for Public Choice and Market Process. If you come in, I'm going to encourage you to take a look at some of our literature, both about Adam Smith Week and about the Center for Public Choice and Market Process that's over here on this table. So we have flyers for the events so that you can make sure that you know when the rest of our events are this week, as well as information about the center and all of its programming opportunities. The Center for Public Choice and Market Process advances the economic, political, and moral foundations of a free society. And we do this through a variety of programming opportunities. We have a regular free market speaker series where we bring speakers in all year round to come in and talk about a variety of events related to economics, politics, and philosophy. We have a reading group, the Economics Book Colloquium. So every semester we do a readings group with students on current writings in economics. This semester, the book that we're reading is actually by one of the authors that we're bringing in here for Adam Smith Week, so we have opportunities often to interact with the authors in those sessions. We have weekend activities with doing reading groups again, of sort of weekend discussion colloquiums, as well as seminars where we bring in several outside speakers. And then we have the Market Process Scholars Program, which is our mentoring program. The scholars participate in the activities of the center, as well as get an opportunity to work with faculty to develop research skills, to develop professional and soft skill development, leadership, and try to prepare them best for whether it's graduate school or the professional world. So I hope that if what you're seeing this week in Adam Smith Week is of interest to you, that you will grab some of our information, learn more about the center, maybe how you can become involved. You'll see on here, and I'll leave the link up here, as this is rotating through, you'll see there is a link that you can go to, as URL, to conduct a survey, as well as provide your name for attendance purposes. So if you have been provided extra additional incentives to come here, and you want to indicate to your faculty members that you were here by filling out the survey and filling out your name in the attendance part, then we'll send that to the faculty members so that they know that you were here. At this point in time, I want to bring up one of our market process scholars, Will McEwen, who will introduce our speaker for this afternoon.
Good afternoon, everyone. Like Dr. Calcano said, my name is Will McEwen. I'm a junior and a market process scholar, and I have the privilege of introducing today's esteemed speaker, Mr. Bob Chitester. A little bit of education background. Mr. Chitester received his bachelor's and master's degrees from the University of Michigan, and received an honorary doctorate in literature degree from Allegheny College. In 1977, Mr. Chitester, along with Rose and Milton Friedman, began a film project that became Free to Choose, an award-winning PBS TV series, and later an international best-selling book based on that series, which even now, decades later, is still widely used and incredibly influential. Mr. Chitester is the founder and chairman of the board of Free to Choose Network, a public foundation which houses Free to Choose Media, an award-winning global entertainment company. Free to Choose Media has launched over 500 projects under the leadership of Mr. Chitester. Man, that's hard to say. Which has made incredible contributions to the disciplines of economics, history, and the world of education as a whole. Mr. Chitester is here today to lecture, to give a lecture with one of the truly most intriguing titles I've heard, Hogwarts Libertarians. So please join me in welcoming Mr. Bob Chitester.
Thank you for that welcome. I hope you're as pleased at the end of the hour. I want to start with a quote. Enter stranger, but take heed of what awaits the sin of greed. For those who take but do not earn must pay most dearly in their turn. So if you seek beneath our floors a treasure that was never yours, thief, you have been warned. Beware of finding more than treasure there. This will be a test of how many of you are really familiar with Harry Potter. That statement appears on the door of a building early in the Harry Potter saga. Who knows what door it is and where it was located? One taker? I'm going to have you answer, but anyone else think you know the answer? 2, 3, 4. Okay, good. It's your choice.
I think it's Gringotts and Diagon Alley.
Right. Exactly right. Now, it's interesting as I've been rereading this. In fact, it wasn't until last week reading it again that I realized there's an interesting setup there. Enter stranger, but take heed of what awaits the sin of greed. If you stop with that quote right there, you walk away with a very different understanding of what it is saying. Because it's implying that the sin of greed is bad. But then it goes on to say, so if you seek beneath our floors a treasure that was never yours, now you've got a different twist on it. That plays right into the question of economic thinking that I want to play back and forth with you with regard to the Harry Potter saga. By the way, there's another shop in Diagon Alley that played a very important part in the entire saga, and it's Ollivanders. Someone else can tell us who Ollivanders was? You in the back? Do you remember? Yes.
It's the wand shop.
Exactly, he is. And this is my wand. Now, in the story, it says the wand chooses the wizard. I want to make I want to please you with a brief little thing about that. The wand chooses the wizard. What's the implication of that statement about wizards? They must all be different, right? Now see, what am I here about? I'm trying to get you to understand and think about, if you're a Harry Potter fan, there's an awful lot of stuff in there that can relate to the economic way of thinking. By the way, Harry's wand and Ollivander was right at the beginning of the saga. Those of you who don't know it, there's a bad guy, Voldemort, and in the wand shop, Ollivander gives you the first hint of an interesting relationship. Voldemort tried to kill Harry Potter, failed to do so. Now Harry Potter's old enough to go off to school. He's never even understood he was a wizard until then. Now he's encountering these people, and Ollivander says that there's this curious tie between he and this weird wizard, mean wizard who tried to kill him. And the tie was that Harry's wand was holly with a phoenix feather. It was 11 inches long. Voldemort's was yew and phoenix feather, 13 and a half inches long. And Ollivander points out that the phoenix feather for each of those came from the same bird, and the only 2 phoenix feathers it gave. Now, mine, by the way, is made of cherry. I hand carved it. And I chose to infuse it with Weircat whiskers. Any Aragon the Dragon Rider fans in the crowd? It's another science fiction fantasy story that I like. All right. How many of you are majoring in econ? Come on, be bold. Let's see how many. If you want to change later, you can. Peter won't hold it against you for being honest. How many of you have read Harry Potter, all 7 books? Come on, let's see all those hands. I need to know. I don't even know if I'm in friendly territory or not. I have read all 7. I have listened to the audio book of Harry Potter 7 probably 4 times all the way through, maybe 5. And I've watched the movies at least twice. I find it to be a phenomenal piece of work, the imagination of it. And what I want to do is give you some hints as to a fun way. And remember the fact, well, you wouldn't know this necessarily. I think this is as of about maybe at the worst a year ago, maybe 6 months ago, that there had been 450 million copies sold worldwide of the Harry Potter saga, and there are 79 translations in 79 different languages. And of course, it turned C.K. Rowling into a pound millionaire, maybe a pound billionaire or a pound, probably a dollar billionaire and a pound millionaire, whatever. It all there's so many things in it that tie to the economic way of thinking that one of the questions that people are kicking around was what was J.K. Rowling's personal perspective? Does she come to it with a political agenda? I don't think she did, but I do think that she was sensitive to certain kinds of ideas. For example, in checking and looking at it, looking at her background, she gave $1 million to the Union Party in Scotland. And the Union Party was dedicated to stopping the effort in Scotland to have Scotland withdraw from the United Kingdom in the way that the United Kingdom has left Brexit. So she obviously has a sense of tradition and a certain sense in a conservative perspective. But it's clearly not. It's not an Atlas Shrugged novel of advocacy in any way. It's far more fun to read and far more entertaining, in my view, than Atlas Shrugged, although I probably have offended some mighty objectivists in the room. I'm going to take a brief break, which I normally don't do, but and I may repeat a little bit of something you'll hear tonight if you come to the other presentation about Milton Friedman and also about Adam Smith in the context of what we're talking about today. I hope if you really want to understand Adam Smith, you take on the additional challenge of reading his theory of moral sentiments. The tendency is to read and study The Wealth of Nations. But Smith considered the theory of moral sentiments to be a far more important work in his time. Now, as it turns out, it has not gotten the attention that it deserves, in my judgment. We did a 2-hour series on Adam Smith for public television, a 2-hour series. It's available at our website, which is freetochoose.tv, and I urge you to watch it. In 2-hour-long programs, I think you'll add a great deal of understanding of Adam Smith. And in it, we deal with the theory of moral sentiments, and it'll help you understand the fact that he was not a Darwinian laissez-faire economist. That he was very sensitive to the issue of ethical and moral society. Okay. What's the central theme of the Harry Potter saga? This one, I think even those who have read it, I don't think you'll, at least I'm going to give you my sense of what it is. Yes, sir?
Is it a hidden road?
Well, it certainly is that, and that's a good answer. But that's the distinction between the magical world and the real world, and it's handled in a very fascinating way in the book. You're absolutely right. And I'm going to quote, there's an exchange in terms of why that's the case, which I'll come to. But only in thinking, I only came up to this answer about 3 days ago when I started thinking about it again. What is the main theme? Main underlying theme. And in the terms of the Harry Potter saga, not in terms of things we might be talking about. By the way, anybody who would like to, I did, in fact, create this one myself. I love to do woodwork. It was all, I did it all by hand. You may check it out and pass it along. Be careful though. I've taken off the spells, so it shouldn't react. But, we should be cautious. But let's go back to that theme.
Choice?
Choice, that's certainly one, but
Overcoming challenges.
yes, those are general. I'm looking for something that's very specific to the story itself. The basic conflict between Voldemort, the Malfoys, the Death Eaters, and Dumbledore, Hogwarts, Harry, and the Weasleys.
Or good versus evil.
What was it again?
Good versus evil.
It's good versus evil, yes, but there's also, it's a much more mundane thing.
Competition. Competition.
Competition. Let me think how I can give you a better hint of it. Oh, somebody else wanted to take a chance on it?
I don't know if this is way far out, but I'd say like love or friendship.
Friendship and love starts to get at the thing. Here's the big hint for those who have read it. Hermione, Harry, and the Weasleys are the three important students. They're the main characters in a movie, if you'd say. What is the difference? What is the difference between between Ron Weasley and Hermione in the context of the magic world?
Hermione's parents aren't wizards, but Ron's parents are.
Yes. And what was the phrase used? Do you remember any of you? The phrase that was used by Mudbloods. So you hear in this whole, if you think, challenge me, and I've only just recently come to this idea, that that's a fundamental theme in this whole because Voldemort, that's what he built his following on. He said, we must eliminate the Mudbloods from the magic community. Now, what I'm trying to do here is suggest to you something that Milton Friedman did, as I understand, in every class he came into, which is there is a way of thinking about the world called the economic way of thinking. And you mentioned it, I think, first, choice, choosing. I was asked once, how do you explain economics? There was a woman sitting next to me in an airplane going to San Francisco. I didn't want to talk to her very much because I was busy. But when we were landing, I turned back to her and we chatted a bit. I changed her life. Because I told her, because she said, oh, that's very, very complicated and difficult. I said, it's not difficult at all. It's just about choice. Now, you can do all those supply and demand graphs and all that stuff. But when it really comes down to it, it is what decisions do people make? Why do they make them? And can we predict outcomes from those choices they make? So if you apply that general thought to your world, we were talking at lunch today about why is it that Beatrice, by the way, picked me up last night and drove me into town. Very, very nice of her to do that. And in the course of our discussion, the one thing I want to talk about, as soon as she told me she was from Oklahoma State, was wrestling. Because Oklahoma State is a big wrestling thing. Well, at lunch we were talking about, well, in the South, that's not the case. The Southern Conference is not very big. It's the Southwest and the Big Ten, etc. So you have these distinctions. I said, all right, what immediately comes to your mind? Why? If it doesn't come to your mind, I want it to. I want you to say why about anything you hear. There's a quote by Bernard Height, an astrophysicist, that says basically the answers can give us, can help us understand But questioning answers is where we have discoveries and knowledge. Now think about that. That means, therefore, you never stop asking questions. You get an answer, you ask a question about that. How many of you have professors that do that to you? Any, I assume. And Milton Friedman would have done that. As I understood, he'd come into class, he would read some article in news in the current events, and then at the end of the class, he'd ask the students to tell him why he thought that was relevant and how they would relate it to the economic way of thinking. Okay. So we talked about the mudblood, and then with the personalities. The first evidence of that is when Draco Malfoy meets Harry Potter. Those who know the story, tell people who Draco Malfoy is. How do you describe him? What's his background?
So all wizard family, they're pretty well off, really pristine, well-known.
Yeah.
He just thinks he's better than Harry in general.
I wish. Did you hear it all? Try it louder. Try it louder, because I can do it.
He comes from a very prestigious family. They're all wizards. They're well known. He thinks he's just better than Harry in general.
Right. The other one, he tries to tell Harry, "Hey, you want to get along in the wizard world? You should pay attention to me, Malfoy, Draco Malfoy. You'll soon find out some wizarding families are much better than others, Potter. You don't want to go making friends with the wrong sort. I can help you there." And Harry's response was, "I think I can tell who the wrong sort are myself, thanks." Draco said, "I'd be careful if I were you, Potter. You hang around with riffraff like the Weasleys and the Hagrid, and it'll rub off on you." Now, what is C.K. Rowling doing here? She's taking as a main theme the issue of the other, right? The outsider. She's creating a dramatic tension in the piece between those who are acceptable and those who are not. Now, how does that relate to the economic way of thinking? There's one out of left field, if you would. Someone, come on, someone, give me your thoughts on that. How does that relate? How would you approach that from the economic point of view, applying it, in this case, on a macro basis? Although it applies both, micro and macro. Okay, take a shot at that. How do you solve that problem? Because what he's saying is the Malfoys are unwilling to deal with everyone on the same terms, right? In the case of economic way of thinking really is an expression. I'm going to use this terrible term, free market capitalism. It is certainly an expression of the economic way of thinking. Private property. Interesting point. Anybody have any idea how Lucius Malfoy makes a living?
He's a bureaucrat. He's a top level bureaucrat.
He is that, to the best we can determine. One of the challenges in the Harry Potter world is, how do people make a living? And what is impeding them from doing so? Yes, go ahead.
The Department of
You
Ministry.
can go up and help teach class.
The Department of Ministry just like has their own rules of what they can do and what they can't do.
The Ministry of Magic, if you know the series, again, there are a lot of you who haven't read it. Maybe, I hope you're tempted. Or listen to the audio with Jim Dale. It's an unbelievable performance of one person reading all the characters. The Ministry of Magic is always on the side of restricting people, of limiting them. And it gets worse and Baltimore is trying to take over the Ministry of Magic so that he can use them to advance his agenda of dealing with the mudbloods. Get rid of them. Totally. Now, I would argue that you can make a parallel between that overall dramatic scene and what we have to deal with every day in a free society. All you have to do is change a few of the changes, few of the words. Mudbloods become African Americans. Lucius Malfoy becomes trust fund babies, is the way I put it, because I'm not sure how he made his money, and he may have inherited it. But certainly, it is those in society who believe they should not be governed as everyone else. The economic way of thinking only works with rule of law. And here I'll go into Milton Friedman a bit. I spent an awful lot of time with Milton Friedman over almost a 30-year period. And at one point in our discussion, fairly late in that, it was after Hong Kong had gone had become part of the Chinese Republic, and Milton was very curious about that, to see what would happen in Hong Kong, and particularly in China at large. Milton's theory was, if you have economic freedom, political and personal freedom will follow. And his feeling was, if you don't have all three, you have a totally unstable government, and it will revert, as we're seeing in Venezuela. It's either going to go free, or it's going to go into a dictatorship. There is no equilibrium in that middle status, because there is no rule of law. By the way, a lot of confusion over that, what that means. It just means the laws all apply equally to everybody. That clearly is a play within Harry Potter. And again, I'm taking liberties when I say Hogwarts Libertarians. They would not have described themselves that way, and in a certain sense, I cannot justify doing so to a great degree. But I'm suggesting that if I look at all of the various aspects of the series, it can help us understand ourselves in terms that are kind of interesting and fun. What principles seem to define the society? By the way, I'm asking you questions that I'm not sure I have absolute answers on. I keep exploring that. Is the world of magic governed by libertarian principles?
I think more like power, or whoever has the most influence, whether it be through wizardry or just status.
Yeah, good. It's one of my items in my presentation about power. And carry that a step further. You say, what does libertarian imply?
You leave people to over choose how they want to spend their money, what market should be involved in, what market should.
Yeah.
Or in general, just choose.
Just choose. The libertarians are all over the ballpark in terms of what they ask. It's like anything else. What is here's something important for you to think. How many of you believe that there's more than maybe even that there's likely even one person here that would agree with you on everything in a, say, a 15-minute conversation? Anybody know any friends that are that close, you're that close to, that in a 15-minute discussion of a broad range of things, you will agree on everything? Okay. That's what implied. But where does power play into that? It's obvious.
People with more power say what's right or wrong. I guess.
Well, yeah, they tell you what you're going to do. If I disagree with you, what are my courses of action? Pardon?
Ignore you or convince you.
Yeah, but there's one other word that's rather strongly a part of any libertarian concept. It begins with F, and it's not that other one.
Force?
Force. Power, again. Force. It's that I don't, and that's what Voldemort's basically saying, hey, I'm going to force you to accept my view of the world. As people interested in how society could be organized, and I can't believe there isn't a person in here that doesn't have a strong interest in that. I'm simply trying to give you a very fresh and different way of looking at and understanding what does that mean you're having to contend with. Now, let me give you another quote. I have to find it here. And I could paraphrase it, but I'd rather, here it is. It's not the power quote, that's it. I got that in a different place. Harry, early on, has this exchange with Hagrid. Ooh, ask that question. Who's Hagrid? You don't know. Did you read the series? Yeah. Animal keepers of the ground, a giant. Hey, you're right. You get an A. That's good. And Hagrid is the one who goes to pick up Harry. And I won't go into Hagrid's background and history, but it's fascinating. He's not a wizard, but he is a wizard, and he's been blamed for things he didn't do and all kinds of stuff. Fascinating. He goes to get Hagrid, or he goes to get Hagrid to take him away from Harry's aunt and uncle, who are raising him, and they know his background. They know that his mother was a witch, and that he probably is going to be a wizard, and they don't like it at all. They don't want him to go to school. They do everything they can to prevent it. Well, Hagrid shows up and basically takes him away from him. But anyway, Harry then asks Hagrid, what does the Ministry of Magic do? Hagrid's answer was, well, their main job is to keep it from the Muggles. Who are the Muggles? Somebody else here, come on. You've read Harry Potter. Who are the Muggles? Non-magic people. Yeah. Okay. And Hagrid says, well, the main job is to keep it from the Muggles, that there's still witches and wizards up and down the country. Harry then says, why? Why, blimey, Harry, everyone be wanting magic solutions to their problems. I throw that out at you because, to me, anytime I see anything like that, I think, that's the challenge we have in a free society. We are voting ourselves down the road to difficult times because we are trying to find magic solutions to problems. Now that raises all kinds of interesting questions if you're a literature major in terms of how does C.K. Rowling resolve that with the fact that there is limitations within the Muggle community. In fact, there's been an article written, I can't remember who it was, an economist wrote it, suggesting that the wizards and witches were hurting themselves economically by being unwilling to interact with, in an open way, the non-magical community. Because the non-magical community were advancing technologically, etc., and the wizards were still playing around with their magic. There's also a second aspect of it. The mirror of Ersed. You're shaking your head, you remember it? You don't? You do?
It shows what your greatest desire is.
Yes. Now, why is that something that each of you, why is that something I want you to think of? In the context of Harry Potter saga. You're all interested, you're at the stage in your life when you want the world to be better, right? And that's why you're here, that's why you're studying. So why is the issue of a mirror that when you look in it shows you at whatever outcome you have in your head is going to make you happy? And you can come back to that mirror anytime you want in your lowest thing, and there it is, your dream.
You never leave the mirror.
You never leave the mirror. And if you do leave the mirror, you do so in a state of depression. And you don't function in a free society fully if you are totally captured by your desires, which are unlimited. Now, economics majors now may be seeing where I'm going with that one. Economics major explain why that's a very important point. And the distinction, yes?
We live in a world of scarce resources. You can never fit all your desires that you want.
Can you say that about twice as loud?
We live in a world of scarce resources, so you can never get all the desires that you want.
Okay. Anyone here want to challenge that? Anyone here disagrees with that statement? And by the way, don't not share it with us. If you do disagree, it's not a challenge. We're not going to say, oh yeah, you know. I'd be very interested to know if anybody has a contrary thought about that. That we live in a world of scarce resources, and we cannot have any of it. Can Bill Gates have anything he wants? I mean, I'll take it to the extreme. No. Not anything. He's got more money than maybe stars in the sky sometimes. And yet, if you go to rule of law, and you maintain rule of law, I'd say, if there was no rule of law, then he kind of is, someone with that kind of money, well, he ends up being a Putin, to be very honest, because the only difference between Putin and Bill Gates is that Putin seems to be a government official, where in effect, he has played a very interesting game, and he essentially, like the Tsar, owns Russia. And if you haven't thought about that, that's another thing to go interesting exploring. And why does that relate to us? Do you have a solution for how to deal with a scarce world? Do you feel it? You feel it as you get older? Tell me right now, isn't there something right now that you would like to have? Just like that.
I think everyone always wants more money.
Wants more money. Okay, do we want more money? Harry Potter had huge amounts of money, by the way. No evidence of where it came from. But what James and Lily, his parents, what they did to make it, I have no idea. But he seemed to have lots of money. And the Weasleys, on the other hand, had very little money, and we know what his dad did. He worked for the Ministry of Magic. An editorial comment on my part, maybe that's a good sign. Maybe that way they didn't get many talented wizards because they didn't pay them enough. Which is a good thing from my point of view. Let's have government not have the sharpest people on earth. Why? Why would I say that from an economic point of view? From the economic way of thinking. Why would you say that you're better off that government officials are not more efficient?
We live by already questioned them and assuming that they're going to address.
Hear that? This guy's giving me a lot of good answers, I just don't get the volume. Get him in one of my courses a long time ago in public speaking. Moving him up the razzle. Okay. Let me go back to, I have to point this out because I just love it. And for those of you, by the way, one reference about how people make money, Harry asked Ron Weasley if all his family are wizards, and Ron said, I think Mom's got a second cousin who's an accountant, but we never talk about him. So there's some bias in the opposite direction in that case. On regulations, I just love this because it is such a wonderful caricature of what government can be. Public choice theory, you at least ought to know that name if you're in economics. Jim Buchanan and Gordon Tullock wrote a book on it. By the way, it caused kind of personal disruption because Jim Buchanan got the Nobel Prize for it, and they didn't give it to Tullock. And I know from personal experience that Tullock was not happy over that. But public choice theory is something you should know about. And it simply says that people in government behave on the basis of the same incentives of people in the private sector. And the sense that they're civil servants and therefore they march to a different drum doesn't make any sense. Because we're all humans, we're all with the same thing. And here, one of the Weasleys is an apostate. He's not with the libertarian side of the family, Percy. And he's talking about his job. He says he's been working on a report for the Department of International Magical Cooperation. We're trying to standardize cauldron thickness. Some of these foreign imports are just a shade too thin. Leakages have been increasing at a rate of almost 3% a year. That'll change the world, the report will, said Ron Weasley, satirizing his brother. So there's a lot of commentary in here, and again, from a libertarian point of view, this suggests that there is a strong libertarian theme within the Harry Potter saga. Another one. Oh, well, I'm going to skip that one and come back to it. Because there's one other. Mr. Weasley, whose job was in the Ministry of Magic was to deal with these kinds of things. He said that an Egyptian wizard who was visiting the Triwizard tournament, well, it's complicated, but anyway, Weasley says, Ali Bashir's on the warpath. He wants a word with you about your embargo on flying carpets. So, in Britain, you can only use brooms. You cannot use flying carpets and import them. Now, was that C.K. Rowling's goal to point out the nonsensical aspect of regulatory activity? I don't care. I'm simply saying to you, there's again evidence that the underlying theme here tends toward a limited government, a libertarian, leave the choices to the individual in that very interesting saga. This is the final one about the Ministry of Magic, and this is Hermione Granger, who, by the way, is brilliant. And again, those of you who are interested in building up the sense of women's worth in the world, Hermione Granger is a very, very good role model for you to use in doing that. And I have to believe, I cannot believe, because the Harry Potter saga, it's going to be almost eternal. From what I can see, I fully anticipate that my only great-grandson will eventually read the Harry Potter saga. It is just the right kind of thing at that middle school age to introduce somebody and get them to read. How many of you are familiar with the phenomenon of the releases of Harry Potter, of her next books. How many of you, anyone here stay up to midnight? Aha, there's 2, 3, probably some of the others won't admit it. And we dealt with it in our home. The way I dealt with it, because we were raising a granddaughter. Amazon helped. Because Amazon agreed that if you pre-ordered the next book, they would deliver it to your house before midnight on the day that it was being released. But a lot of people went to bookstores, stood in line. It's like the next Apple computer coming out. So my point is, it's a powerful piece of literature. And I'm interested in having people understand what we've been talking about, choices. And one of the things I think of, heaven's sakes, millions and millions of people are going to read the Harry Potter saga. I want to open your eyes, so as you, in 5, 10 years, and you've got kids and you're starting to introduce them, I hope you remember being here and we're talking about this, because it's a good way to engage young people in discussing ideas that are going to make or break their happiness in the world, depending on how they're applied or not applied. And here's a way to introduce them, because in this case, Hermione Granger, she is without any doubt, she's the most rational and in some ways intelligent of the people in the book. Harry kind of just wanders into things, and Ron Weasley is in between the two, I guess is the way to put it. Now, I'm going to stop anything further here other than to give you a chance to ask me questions about anything and anything, either in the Harry Potter saga or about Milton Friedman and my activities with him.
I'm curious about which one would you say is your favorite character in Harry Potter, and the one that you don't like the most?
Ah, that's interesting. I have to. The one I don't like the most, the one I like the least, is a toss-up between Rita Skeeter and the woman who comes in and takes over for Umbridge, and Professor Umbridge. It's between those two. Skeeter, because she represents an awful lot. That's a pretty good caricature of the way the press treats people. And those of you who don't know the story, Rita would do anything to get information. Hermione does a job on her by casting a spell that turns her into a beetle and puts her into a jar and captures her. But those two, now the one that I like the best, in a way, it's Luna. Someone tell the others who aren't familiar who Luna is. Okay.
She reminds me of like a free spirit. She's the most like wholesome of the group. I don't know, but she's just, it's hard to explain, like how
She's the target of everybody. She's so different that she's the target of a lot of nasty tricks, etc.
But then it doesn't like bother her at all. Like she's just like lets it roll off her back.
Yeah. The example about her shoes. Anybody want to share that? It's the end of term. And everybody's packing to go home. And Luna is caught walking through the hallways. And does anybody remember what went on then? I think Harry was asking her what she was doing.
Was she looking for her shoes? Because someone took them?
Yeah, I think that was it. Yeah, but it became implied. It was shoes specifically. But then she made the comment that people would steal her clothes all term long, and at the end of the term, she had to go around Hogwarts and find her clothes. Fascinating character. So I kind of liked her in that sense. Other questions?
So Milton Friedman was pretty big in the school choice movement, being able to choose schools. Hogwarts is arguably the only wizarding school available to those in England and probably Western Europe. What would you say Milton Friedman would say about that aspect, that Hogwarts is the only one available, and of the context that while Hogwarts acts more or less independently, I'm pretty sure tuition is paid for by the Ministry of Magic. So, like, what would Milton Friedman say? Would you defend against him, or do you side with him on his statements?
Yeah, great question. And I may end up asking some more questions in order to try to help both of us resolve that. Let's go to the fundamental question you asked first, because I hadn't thought about it until you asked the question. And that is Hogwarts totally supported financially by the Ministry of Magic? I think you're right, because the Ministry of Magic does have the power to replace the headmaster. And then how does that fit in that kind of, who controls the money controls the game, is one way, one method. That's why controlling your own money is so important. And why you should be, by the way, Friedman was for reducing taxes, period, anywhere for any reason, because he thought you would be better off spending your money than anybody else, living with government. But I'd have to say that, and I'm very glad, I'm going to, maybe by Thursday night when I'm doing the same speech in Arkansas, I'll give some thought to that very question, which I haven't, and how Milton would react, because I'm trying to think if there's a sense they select people. It's unclear whether, for example, all children of all, no, it's not. Here's one hint that we should think about. Hermione's parents are not wizards. So the Weasleys, they know they're wizards, so they would be looking at Hogwarts as a place where their child's going to go to school. In the case of Hermione Granger, her parents only found out when Hogwarts went to them, which is the same as happened with Harry, only it's a little different scenario. So the parents, if they're a magical parent, they're choosing Hogwarts. There's no sense of taxation. So there's no sense of whether the Weasleys are paying anything to the Ministry of Magic in return for. So Milton's main thesis, which is the money should follow the child, parents' money, by the way. I assume most of you understand some of the basics of school choice. It isn't that parents don't pay a tax, but that tax must be used for education, but the parent can decide which school gets the tax money that you pay, not you. That's the fundamental of school choice. And it is primarily a program that benefits low-income people. And it's complicated, and in a political sense, it's confounding why both parties are totally for some focus of school choice, because effectively it's one of the most powerful welfare programs you can come up with. Let the parent decide where their child will go to school, instead of the parent not having that choice for financial reasons. I don't know how Milton would then ultimately end up. And there's not a lot of clues in there about other schooling, and nothing about how the Muggles, the non-magical, go to school. Any other questions? I think we're pretty close to, we got 2 minutes, we can take one or two quickly. Yes?
I guess the usual Harry Potter question, what's your favorite book?
What's my favorite book?
Of the series, yeah.
Ooh. I think it's the Deathly Hallows. It's the one in which we first are introduced to the, what are they called? Voldemort's second, third, fourth, fifth, what do
Oh, the Horcruxes.
Yeah, the Horcruxes. We're introduced to that, and it's that one in which Dumbledore is hurt in his efforts to acquire the Horcruxes, and that's just from a literary point of view. I just thought there was a lot of interesting drama there, but I like them all very much. And I thank you for coming to visit with me, and I hope you. I heard you all to go back and reread Harry Potter and convince all your friends to reread it, and maybe engage them. Be a great discussion, even if you got them to read the first book, and then said, "Hey, let's have an all-nighter discussing what this is all about." Thank you.